Hello rugby fans and welcome back to Rugby. Today we're just going to do a very quick run through video on the Six Nation lineups for round 2. So far 4 of the 6 teams have named their matchday 23s, with Wales and Italy yet to name their squads. So let's dive into it from the very first game where we have Ireland-Italy at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. Andy Farrell has rung the changes by his standards. He has made some very exciting calls, I would argue, starting in the pack where we look at the back row where Cormac Izuchuku comes in at number 6. Now the Ulster utility forward obviously plays a lot at lock for his province, but is, in my opinion, probably better suited to the back row and is just such a phenomenally exciting dynamic ball carrying talent for this Irish pack. And very importantly, he is exceptional in the lineout, so you really don't lose anything there. Now, you have to say Cian Prendergast might feel pretty hard done by in this one, given, in my opinion, he played pretty well in France in a pack that was beaten up. He was sort of one of these players who showed plenty of intent, which, if I'm being honest, I disagree with Andy Farrell. I don't think it was a lack of intent by the Irish team. I just think it was a terrible strategy and poorly executed, which, if we're being honest, probably falls a little bit more on the coaching staff than the playing squad, in my opinion. So let's see what reaction we get this week. In the rest of the back row, Caelan Doris shifts to 7, with Josh van der Flier joining Prendergast and being dropped out of the matchday 23 altogether. Now, this feels perhaps like a bit more of a permanent move, with van der Flier just struggling for form so far this season. I mean, he's been a phenomenal servant for Leinster and Ireland, but time seems to be catching up with him. And personally, I've been calling for Doris to play 7 for quite some time, because I think there's a lot of exciting number 8s in Irish rugby, namely Brian Gleeson down at Munster, and of course Bryn Ward, who has sort of burst onto the scene this season. So Doris at 7 feels like a really interesting move. Completing the back row, Jack Conan comes in at number 8, being rewarded for his great form. I mean, he's a British and Irish Lions starter on 2 tours, and he's got to be one of the most unlucky men in professional rugby just to be around at the same time as sort of Caelan Doris and always being on the bench behind him. But Conan in gives you real big oomph on the carry, so that's a very dynamic back row in my opinion. When we look across the pack elsewhere, the other changes are James Ryan coming into the second row with Tyke Byrne dropping to the bench in what's just sort of feels like a positional shift for this week, and something that you might see change again next week when we head over to Twickenham. But he partners Joe McCarthy, who gets a start once again. On the bench, Tyke Furlong is back, which is just huge news 1 week before that Twickenham clash, and more importantly, focusing on the here and now, that Italian scrum is no joke. We saw what they did to Scotland last week, so having Furlong back in the mix is brilliant. Tom O'Toole is replacing Michael Milne, and Milne will feel pretty hard done by, similar to Prendergast. He was just one of these brilliant players last week. He came off the bench and obviously scored that try and just brought a lot of oomph, so I think he'll feel quite hard done by. And Tom O'Toole, there's a lot of debate whether he's a loose head or a tight head, so it's very interesting that the Irish coaching staff are backing him against one of the better scrums in the Six Nations in Italy. Now, the big news on the bench, as we see, is Edwin Adogbo set to make his debut. Now, he is just such a brilliant player for Munster and really, really physical operator. And for Ireland, it's huge because it means they do not only need to rely on Joe McCarthy. You've got 2 players there, and you can manage the game plan of Joe McCarthy, which is big long term. But equally, it means you're not losing anything when you take McCarthy off in terms of the power game when you bring Adogbo on. Personally, I could see the 2 of them starting at some stage when you rejig a back row to have more jumpers, so that's something for down the line, but great to see Adogbo there. In the back line, Craig Casey gets the start at 9. Jameson Gibson Park had probably one of his poorer outings in the Irish jersey, I would argue, last week, but he is dropping down to the bench. I'd imagine he'll come back for the England game unless Casey plays brilliantly, which would just be great for Irish rugby as a whole. Casey's partnered by Sam Prendergast. Many people were obviously calling for him to perhaps be dropped this week after what was a very tough outing in Paris, 7 missed tackles, and anyone who's defending the defensive side of things, it's just not accurate. Prendergast slipped far too many tackles, but Farrell's doubling down and he's going with him. Many people were calling for Jack Crowley or Harry Byrne to come into that position, but Prendergast remains in situ there. In the back 3, there are 2 changes. Both wingers are being switched out. James Lowe comes back onto the left wing. Again, another player who will feel pretty hard done by is Jacob Stockdale, given the game plan just did not suit him at all to get him back into the Irish Irish attack, but Lowe comes back onto the left wing. But it is good news for Ulster Rugby elsewhere, with Robert Balakoon, another one of these very exciting, dynamic, fringe sort of Irish players who comes into the right wing. Now he can change the whole sort of look of this Irish attack with his pace. So really great to see him back. And then Jamie Osborne is in at fullback. The centres are as they were last week, with Stuart McCluskey and Gary Ringrose there again. So that's the Irish selection. We don't have the Italian selection as of yet. Personally, I'm backing Ireland for a pretty big win. I think anything less than sort of 15 points, and this is being respectful to Italy, who've come a long way. I think anything less than 15 points will be a disappointment for Ireland, and perhaps could lead to more discussion this week about where direction the team are going in. So that's my prediction for that match. Next up, we have the Calcutta Cup, and this is such a fascinating matchup in recent years between England and Scotland. Steve Borthwick hasn't really made that many changes, just Finn Smith coming onto the bench in replacement of Marcus Smith. Now, for me, that indicates a real doubling down in the kicking game. Obviously, it's a bit more like for like with George Ford and Finn Smith. So great to see the really exciting young Saints player get in. Obviously, Marcus Smith will be disappointed to miss out, but that's the only change in the England matchday squad at present. Scotland, Gregor Townsend, after that brutally disappointing round 1 loss in Rome, has made 5 changes, all coming in the pack. We have Nathan Macbeth coming in for Pierce Goodman at loosehead, George Turner in at hooker, Jamie Ritchie back in the matchday squad in the back row, and Gregor Brown starting in the second row. Dave Cherry going onto the bench. So plenty of changes in the pack, but interestingly, Townsend has stuck with the same backline that struggled mightily in that torrential downpour. Now, you can argue they didn't get much good quality ball, but really the back three struggled against that Italian back three. So you have to wonder what England are going to be targeting, and you'd imagine it's going to be Jamie Dobie in particular. Now, Dobie, in my opinion, he has the potential to be world class, but I believe he is a scrum half, which is his best position. And I think when you're coming up against one of the best kicking teams with one of the best aerial games in terms of their back three in England, it's a big risk naming Dobie there again when there are more recognised players in that sort of position. You've got Kyle Rowe and that side of things. I know Duan van der Merwe is not necessarily great in the air, but he does bring physicality. But it is what it is, so it'll be interesting to see where we are with that one. I backed Scotland earlier in the week, and since I've seen the lineups, I'm not too sure, but I'm going to stick to my gut. I think Scotland can get this done and get back on track. Obviously, they're going to be relying heavily on Finn Russell and Sione Tuipulotu and Jack Dempsey to kind of get some good go forward there, but I just feel like it'll be such a Scotland thing to do to turn over this England team. So it's going to be very tight, but I think Scotland by 3 at Murrayfield in that one. Now, the final matchup, we have France versus Wales. Wales have not named their match day 23 as of yet, and it's pretty disappointing. There's a lot of tickets still for sale for this match. I think Welsh fans know what's coming, but on the French side of things, Fabien Brau-Boré and Emilien Ganton coming into the centre. And this just shows how good French rugby is right now. You take out a 22-year-old, 25-year-old centre from last week, and then you put in 2 players right at the start of their career, 2 post centres. So without really losing anything, it's just this match, in my opinion, is going to be a complete no contest. And that said, with all due respect to the Welsh players, I think France are going to put 50-60 points up here, and these 2 young centres are potential world beaters. They were 2 of the best under 20 players in recent years, so keep an eye on that. Otherwise, it is as you were for the French. So that is a very quick breakdown on the lineups and a quick prediction for you from each match. Let us know your predictions in the comments below, and what was the biggest selection discussion for your team coming into this week? Who should have been in your squad and who shouldn't have been in your squad? Thank you very much for checking out the video, and make sure you check out the FloRugby subscription packages to catch all of these players live in their club teams when the club game returns. We have the URC, Top 14, Gallagher Prem and Investec Champions Cup, EPCR Challenge Cup, Japan League One, and much more. So make sure you check out that FloRugby subscription package. Thanks again for watching the video.